Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the International Men's Movement, this time number 6 from the Emerald Isle. We're going to be talking about Ireland tonight. I am here with my co-host, the one and only terror of Eastern Europe, Lucian Valsan. Lucian, you want to say hi to everybody?
Hello, everyone.
Good to, let me take this, unfreeze this camera from me because I had it locked on myself for some reason. Anyway, we are joined tonight by, I am sure, one of the founders, or maybe the founder of Men's Human Rights Ireland, Mr. John Gormley, coming to us from Dublin. John, welcome to the program.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much for having me, Paul and Lucian.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this, and I'll go ahead and tell everybody to start with, is that this is the 6th show that I've done with Lucian. And every show, the first 5, I was trying to sound like I knew what was going on while Lucian educated everybody watching the show. Now we get to do a program on a country that I've actually been to and have some familiarity with the history and the culture. Not as though I had lived there, but enough that I feel like I might be able to talk without sounding too terribly stupid. But first, let's get started. John, why don't you just tell us about the general state of affairs right now for men and boys in Ireland overall? How are things going on that front?
Well, one of the most obvious signs that something very, very seriously wrong in any society is where one particular section of people are killing themselves at a rate far beyond what other people are doing. In Ireland, it's well over 5 to 1 that men are killing themselves and boys are killing themselves compared to what women are. I spoke with other people who have told me that the actual official suicide rate figures are basically just make-believe. They're not, the rate is not over 5 to 1. It's far, far beyond that. I don't know the actual exact figures because basically no one does really. I know people who are friends with the guys who go collecting bodies, and the figure stuff they're coming out with is horrifying, to say the least. So they're planning to bring in the Istanbul Convention into Ireland in the very, very near future. But one of the things they have to do is they have to get the Irish people to change their constitution to fit the feminist agenda. But they're trying to get around that. So that's the. I mean, there are other things as well.
Let me interrupt for a second so that we don't lose anybody in the conversation. Lucian, you know a lot about this. You've been writing about this for some time. Why don't you fill everybody in about the Istanbul Convention and what that means?
Well, the Istanbul Convention is, or the Istanbul Convention, as we usually refer to it. It's essentially a Constantinople of shit. No, seriously. The Istanbul Convention is by far the most dangerous document ever adopted within the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe is an organization that has a similar structure with the European Union, but has far more membership. I mean, even Russia is part of the Council of Europe. So essentially every nation in Europe except Switzerland and the Vatican and Belarus are a member in this organization. And the Istanbul Convention is essentially a document about... Okay, the Istanbul Convention is essentially a document meant to bend due process, to bend everything that we used to take for granted on this continent, just to fit the feminist agenda. Let me give you an example. The Istanbul Convention, for instance, says that there should be something like the federal police, and when a woman claims to have been domestically abused, for instance, all the procedures that were in place for that in a particular nation should be superseded by some overreaching bureaucracy that is to implement something that is more in line with the feminists. To put it bluntly, for the Americans listening out there, it's essentially VAWA for Europe, but without the government. It's just a bureaucracy that you can never, ever hold to account.
Okay, so now that Americans can relate to that in terms of VAWA, because we certainly can in terms of the evisceration of due process, You can fast track to citizenship by claiming domestic abuse in the United States, and that has become a wholesale industry that we haven't even begun to scratch on. They are bringing in people from all over Asia and different countries, and people are getting citizenship. So this is the sort of influence that it has over a constitution. So John, when you say they're making efforts to circumvent the Constitution, how are they exactly going about that? How are they going to accomplish that without some sort of resistance?
I'm not sure how they're going to do it exactly, because our Constitution says you cannot remove somebody from their home, which is a big issue here, because during the famine, that's exactly what happened. Basically, people were removed from their homes. So basically, when we wrote our Constitution back in 1919, one of the things we wrote in that was that you cannot take somebody out of their home. So in the Istanbul Convention is that somebody can be removed from their home without any due process. You say, listen, okay, this person has been doing so and so. Actually, this man has been doing so and so. Take him out of here. Obviously, need to say that's wrong. I mean, Lucian, I was looking there through the Istanbul Convention. One of the things that disturbed me most is this constant image people have in their head. It's supposed to be for domestic abuse, generally speaking. Now, I know Article 3 is very clear. It says women only.
Yeah, yes, it is women only. I mean, I've left that out of the description because I always thought it's self-evident. I mean, it's not something. It's not like you've ever seen a feminist bureaucracy writing something that is equal in terms of having, instead of in the sense of regarding people as equal under the law. Yeah, it is women only. I mean, if a man claims to have been domestically abused, he will still be the one removed from his own house, and all his due process rights superseded by the overreaching bureaucracy, because, well, reasons.
Let me ask you a loaded question, John.
Sure.
How likely do you think the women are in your country to take advantage of that law and to effectively seize property and remove husbands?
I believe women in Ireland do love their men. I've very little doubt of that. The issue is that in time, will that change? I don't know. I mean, women are doing it now. I mean, it is possible now at the moment for, if a man and woman are living in a house together, and if he owns it, if she claims that he's been domestically abusing her, he can.
And there we go again.
There we go again, folks. We have had. Okay, go ahead. We got John back now.
But the internet connection.
Yeah.
I'm sure it happens all the time. I was going to move my. If I can move my computer forward about 2 feet, I'll be talking to you from a distance, but it'll be closer to the.
Yeah, no worries. So so if you hold it.
Do whatever you need to do. We'll be good with it.
Hang on one sec.
Man, these things are killing me.
And this is where I wish we had, maybe we could pay tribute to Irish folk music, play a little violin, flute. But we don't have that, and I can't play a violin or a flute, so it wouldn't do us any good if we had them. But as you can see, folks, we're having some technical problems. If you can imagine, I mean, for me, this is pretty fantastic. I'm sitting here actually for free, talking through video to one man in Romania and to another man that's in Dublin, and we're obviously complaining because it's not perfect. So it'll just take a couple of minutes to get straightened out, and we'll have everything together here. Ooh. And this is a first for the international men's movement. We're actually having furniture movement. Well, Lucian, he did knock his camera off one time. But he didn't move a desk across the room. Oh, really? Well, this is the avant-garde version of the international men's movement.
Yeah, well, when I dropped the camera, it was actually a flaw within the tripod that's holding it together.
Well, this is actually more interesting than some of the other interruptions we've had. Uh, it seems like every time I do a show with Dr. T, her dogs wait until a very critical moment in the program and then decide that they see a squirrel, and everything goes nuts.
Well, that is unfortunate. I mean, if it had it been a cat, that would have been far better than a dog. But yeah.
Well, wait a minute. No, yes, if they'd seen a cat and wanted to go after one, that would have been far better. Because I was wondering what it is with all these people in the MRM that are cat fans.
Well, kittens are smarter and cuter than dogs. So yeah.
Well, I don't know. You know, if I start talking about cats, I'm going to say something that a quote miner is going to use against me for the next 5 years. So we won't even go there with that.
Yeah, let's hope we will be able to hear John from that distance.
Well, he's got his headset on. Sounds good. I think it works. So, John, you were saying that under Irish law currently, that there is ways for men, for women to get home-owning husbands out of the home on domestic violence charges, but so far, apparently, the virus of feminism has not affected women's mentality in Ireland to the point that they're taking wholesale advantage of that. Correct?
Not, I don't believe so yet. No, I don't think. I mean, Ireland is very different from other countries. We have a different mindset, so I don't believe that it will happen for quite some time. But I do believe it will happen sooner or later. It's just the way that people think. I mean, if you have an advantage over somebody, some people will take advantage of it. I mean, any woman I know here in Ireland that has been in her marriage was in trouble, what she's always done is they've always been told the same thing: get the man out of the house. Because solicitors know once the man is gone, then they can. That's where the judge will start off from. The judge will start off from the moment. What is the status quo right now? The status quo is they're not living in the house together. He left of his own free will. Therefore, that's where we start. His choice was, I'm going to leave this house. So that's what moment we're going to start from. And that is the issue, because men do not know that as soon as they leave the house.
Uh-oh. Well, I guess I'll take this opportunity to respond to what John has already had to say. There was a time, and I actually remember it, I'm old enough to remember it, when the average American man would have said that the American women love their husbands and love their men, but you can only dangle a carrot in front of somebody's face and tell them that they're owed the carrot over and over and over again so many times before you start training them to grab it. And that's the danger of feminism and it coming in there, because ultimately it's not so much about, well, it is about law, but if people won't take advantage of situations, then the law doesn't matter. But if once you come in and start hammering women with the idea that they're victims and that men are perpetrators and he owes you and they're no good and men are bad and women are superior and they've been oppressed for 5, 10, 15, 20,000, a million years women have been oppressed and it's all at the hands of men, then you can get any woman when she's in the middle of, you know, how the emotions go limbic during a divorce, during a breakup, and then that's when it all kicks in. And when the vengeance, the opportunity to steal, to use the courts to take his property, his children, that's what happens. And I agree with you, John, that will be happening in your country.
I think basically I described it as what they're doing is they're putting a gun on every single table, every single kitchen table in Ireland. Only a woman has access to it. And she can, anytime she chooses, point that gun at the man and shoot. And basically he is gone from there. The Istanbul Convention will just cement that into place, where I think the other biggest thing with the Istanbul Convention is the sheer scale of money involved. I mean, in America, I know it's Clinton signed over $660 million per year, every single year, something like that. But that's going to be happening here in Ireland. I mean, they're going to be having a situation where radical feminists and their movement is going to be having an enormous influx of money and cash and power, because the Istanbul Convention makes it far, far easier for them to get access to government agencies. It will actually cement them in place. And there's other stuff in the Istanbul Convention about consent and all that kind of rubbish. So it terrifies me that this is all coming into Ireland, because, and it is coming. There's very little that we can do about it. I mean, trying to get people to stop and help us is just so difficult. As soon as we explain to people what the problem is, they understand it, but they cannot see that they cannot get it out of their heads that feminism is not equality. Maybe at some point in the past, some of them did agree with it, but from what I've seen, no. I mean, the other thing is that there was a recent survey by a bunch of people called her.ie, and in that survey, basically 43% of women said that they were feminist. I think most of that is basically they believe that it is also equality. I know it's not. You know it's not. But still, it's a. It really. I mean, I was gobsmacked when I heard that. I thought most women in Ireland had common sense. I know there are women out there who absolutely detest feminism and who will continue on detesting it and saying it loudly. Most women don't. Most women keep their mouths shut.
Well, most women do have common sense. I mean, 43%, that means 57% are not feminists. So the statement still holds true. 43% is actually quite a large number when you think about it, Paul, isn't it?
I'm not completely certain that that 43% was actually accurate. I think most women who did that survey were young women, but that's what's coming ahead of us. So that's the other issue. We also, in our travels, we tackled the thing with feminist surveys. They've been doing these surveys with universities. Two of the universities was Trinity College Dublin and University College Cork, UCC. Of those two surveys, basically they used SurveyMonkey to do the survey. Now, I did a survey myself as well. The sort of questions they ask were, have you ever been sexually abused in college? They ask you, are you in college? And I said, no, I'm not, but I'm still doing it anyway. I mean, anyone can do it. I mean, I said a horse stood on my foot, therefore I was sexually abused. No. I mean, the survey is meaningless, but the media here in Ireland, they went along and they published all this stuff.
Sounds like Mary Koss kind of job, doesn't it, Paul?
Yes, it does.
No,
it sounds exactly like that.
It was. I mean, what actually was there was a bunch of clowns who made this thing up. I mean, basically, you ask the entire world, okay, pretend you're from University College Cork or Trinity College Dublin, okay? Now, nobody else do this, just students from those two colleges. Now, what do you think is going to happen? Every feminist on the planet is going to go, I can do that. Hey, I'm going to up my sisters. And that's what they did. I mean, there's 16,000 people in University College Cork, and they, if their figures were correct, that means that 3,000 roughly have been raped in college. I mean,
no, folks, I'm not laughing about 3,000 people being raped. I'm laughing because I know that number cannot be correct.
No, the same. They did the exact same survey with SurveyMonkey. Anyone could do it. And that one, I said I was abducted by an alien from outer space. I mean,
Well, if being abducted by an alien from outer space would get you funding from the government, then alien abductions would skyrocket.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I've asked our local council to put a landing pad outside my back garden. We get funding for that too. I wonder if I
Let
can
me
actually
ask
go
you
around.
this. Let me ask you this, John. Now, Ireland has a reputation of being a pretty religious country, of having people having strong family ties and ties to the church. So, has the church had any voice in what's going on in this country, or are people losing touch with that there?
People are losing touch with it. I mean, there's still a strong religious factor here in Ireland. I mean, I'm not religious myself, but I do believe in God. Um, Normally, when I'm surrounded by enemies, um, I think I know that the church is well aware of what's going on. The church has spoken about. There is if anybody wants to look it up, there is a website called alive.ie, and what they are is it's a Catholic magazine which I have here in churches. They give it out to 250,000 people, but they talk about feminism on a reasonably regular basis. They talk about a false ideology. So the church is well aware. I mean, if the church is writing about this, then it's a big issue. Um, I cannot think of any way of getting ourselves involved in that because the church also has a bad reputation for child abuse and hiding it. So
Yeah.
I would be hesitant about joining their battle as such. That's one of the other issues that when we are looking for allies in our battle, we have to come across some serious nutbags. Um, you've written about a few of them in on the A Voice for Men, and I think it's not really surprising so many men and women turn so um, obnoxious, crazy. I don't know what the proper word is. I mean, we look at what we're up against, and we see how much power, wealth, and how much corruption involved. And every single time you go to do something or see something, and you say, "Hang on a sec, people, look at this," and they're not interested. They think that their life has been so wonderful thus far that it's going to remain wonderful thus far. That's fine until you run into an issue. Once the issue comes up, then it's people have been approaching us and saying, "Listen, okay, I've been kicked out of my house. I have lost my children. I'm up against the HSE, which is the Health Service Executive, or another bunch called Tulsa, who are basically it's a government agency, it's a family and child agency. But if you go into that, you will see it's all about mothers and children. The same thing applies to the HSE. If you go into the HSE, you'll find an awful lot of stuff about feminism there, and you'll find an awful lot of things. Sorry, you find an awful lot of things there about feminism, and you'll find if you research it a bit more, what you do is if you go into the courses on psychiatry, it's very anti-male, anti-father, and the other big one in the psychiatry one is that if you're looking at it seriously, what you will see is that when it comes to suicide, men are blamed for it. It's just, I mean, I was up at a talk by a senator called Mary White, and she basically was pointing the finger at men, saying it's your fault. The reason men commit suicide is because they drink too much. Obviously, I know the reason we drink too much is because, well, we're depressed.
Yeah, but they don't want to hear that part of it,
Nope.
because then you have to talk about why men are depressed, and then you have to start talking about unfair burdens and pressures put on them, and unfair expectations, but they're not going to talk about that. They're just going to politely do what they did with Earl Silverman and invite you to die so that they can point the finger at your corpse and say it was his fault. This is what feminists have been doing for 50 years, And now they're getting even more emboldened about it. Look, I'm going to switch gears here a little bit because there is something, I know our time is somewhat limited, that I've been wanting to ask you about. And I don't even recall the month it was. When was the last International Men's Conference or International Men's Day that was in Dublin?
The conference was actually in Belfast City.
Oh, that's right.
Up north. Yeah, it's about 2 hours away from where I am. I had booked time off for that. I'd taken 2 days off. I was going to meet up with one of our very good friends, 42. I booked a hotel room for myself and a friend of mine, and we were going. Basically, what we were going to do is we would go to the conference itself, speak. I was invited to speak there 15 minutes. I spent 4 weeks beforehand with my associate doing the speech up and trying to get it polished. So what we did was I put the speech after. We were talking to the organisers itself of the conference itself, and they said yes, you're very, very welcome, and no problems at all. Then 40 approached me and said he thinks there might be a problem or an issue with it, but he didn't want to do too much detail. And then one fine day, he said he didn't think it was did not think we were going to be going ahead, but he's going to open talk to him anyway. But then what happened was he was told that no, we're not going. And the reason why was because feminists made a complaint. Belfast Feminist Network made an issue of some of the things that he had written. He said before he went along and said that fathers should be respected by mothers. Now, if you turn that around, mothers should be respected by fathers, is perfectly fine. But because he said that fathers should be respected by mothers, and taken completely out of context, they decided to pull the plug and remove him and anybody he invited, who was included yourself as well. So that cost me 2 days of work.
I can believe it. I know that I was looking forward to that. I'd been invited to make a short video addressing members of the Belfast City Council and other people there, that there was supposed to be a dialogue about men, and imagine of all places, a dialogue about men on International Men's Day. And this group was actually removed from International Men's Day because they weren't feminist enough, and everything was canceled. How did, and now I know that because I saw some of the documentation that Sinn Féin was involved in this, and I just got to wonder, for Northern Ireland, how did they get from the revolution to Emma Watson and he for she? Did John freeze up on us?
I think he did. Until he unfreezes, maybe you should explain a bit more what Sinn Féin is.
Well, Sinn Féin is actually, in reality, and I probably might make a fool of myself here, but Sinn Féin is really, in reality, in my opinion, the political arm of the IRA. Am I wrong about that, John?
I would say that what they are is they. Oh God, it's a very hard one to say. I mean, to explain. You have feminists. Sorry, excuse me. You have they were very, very closely connected. They have said they are not. They have nothing to do with the IRA, but they obviously do because they all have connections to each other. I mean, at this stage here, the IRA has actually decommissioned all its weapons, and they're now all gone. Apparently, they have 300 weapons which they have held on to for personal protection. That's basically what it is. I mean, I've actually looked, and I found that Martin McGuinness has said himself clearly that he is a feminist. So
we went from independence for Northern Ireland to he for she.
He for she.
The Emma Watson, he for she.
God.
That's what they wanted to bring into International Men's Day instead of men's advocates.
Yeah, it was the he for she basically was, we want equality for everybody. Men, I want you to help women.
Yes, and this was being at least supported and sponsored in part by Sinn Féin at the time that your group was removed from International Men's Day. Absolutely insane. How did this happen?
How did it happen? I think what happened was somebody invited the Belfast Feminist Network to come along and either make a presentation or just be guests, and they decided at that point there to check all of us out. They found 40 and they went through all of his stuff and said, hang on a second, he hates feminism, and they removed him. Now, I've seen documentation myself, and it says that we're anti-feminist, therefore you're not going. I mean, to be against feminism does not mean you're against equality, but some people it does. That's exactly what it means. So every single time we go on the street and say we're anti-feminist, basically we're alienating people for that simple.
Yes, but at the end of the day, what's so wrong about being against a totalitarian ideology? I mean, seriously.
Yeah. Well, I think what he's talking about is absolutely right, that the public perception, obviously in Western Europe, in the UK, in the United States, in Canada, in so many places, is that there is this carved in granite impression that feminism is synonymous with women, and feminism is synonymous with equality. And getting through that barrier in people's minds, because absolutely the men in the MHRM and the women are much more about equality, and equality under the law, social equality, and as much as it can be achieved. That's what they're about. And feminists have an overtly, openly practiced totalitarian regime of coercion, and the thing, just like what John just got through describing, is that a group of men who wanted to talk about men's suicide and other men's issues on International Men's Day were kicked out because they weren't feminist or because they opposed feminism. These guys, we joke about feminists being stupid all the time. We really do. We joke about that. And, you know, a lot of them are. If you're just dealing on the level of Big Red, or you know, some other fool out there, Jessica Valenti, Amanda Marcotte, those are idiots. And I think they're people that go out there and they stir up stuff in the media, and they make feminism look like a joke. But there is some very smart and skilled political manipulators within the feminist movement that are not stupid. And I think that we have drastically underestimated their ability to read human behavior, to know where to put pressure, how to put pressure. They have money, they're organized, and they can deal a crushing blow like they did. And people will watch them do that and think, oh, they're doing that for equality. This cultural denial is a worldwide phenomenon that's going on everywhere about what feminists are up to.
Go ahead, John.
Other thing as well about the feminist side, if you go along and go back to the way back when machine, you will not find any feminist websites on there. They have robots in their in their website design. That means that we cannot get access to anything that was written previously. Have you noticed that?
That's why we're so good about screen captures and turning web pages into PDFs, because they still make mistakes, and if we grab them before they take them down, at least we can provide a permanent record.
Yeah, the other thing I've noticed, like in the Irish government, if you check justice.ie, which is the Irish government website, under the search term Dworkin, D-W-O-R-K-I-N, you'll find that she has actually the stuff that she has written has actually gone into making Irish law. The recent anti-prostitution legislation, which was brought out, will be brought out shortly, illegal, but not the selling of it.
So they're going to take the Swedish model of the prostitute is legal, but the customer is the one breaking the law.
Yes, essentially what they're going to do is they're. I mean, what that's about is about money, because the various feminist organisations that deal with this will get lots more money from it. There was also recently the Irish government brought out the new Family Act, where a man has to live with the child and the mother of his child before he has granted automatic access to the child. So if you go out with a girl and you have sex with her and she gets pregnant, you will not get automatic custody unless you're actually living in that house with her for a
I
year.
bet you get automatic I bet you get automatic child support.
Well, I mean, women will, but not men.
Well, welcome to new Puritanism, folks. I mean, this comes right of the playbook of the former religious totalitarians. I mean, this kind of custom, or maybe I should put it even law, used to be the case back in the days when, for instance, Hungary was a religious dictatorship, which happened over 150 years ago. And now what? We've rebelled against the religious dictatorship and religious influence only to get back in with the same nonsense? Well,
Sorry, one of the things is that the legislation which was written before, there was two different ministers for justice. One is Minister Alan Shatter, who was very, very good. He wrote his legislation was meant to be very, very fair. The current minister is Minister Frances Fitzgerald. She is obviously a feminist. She changed it, so took all those bits out that would punish women, for example, for stopping access to the fathers, and she took out all the bits that would actually make things better for men. Automatic custody was one of the things that she took out, and she put in that a man has to live obviously with the woman and child for a year beforehand.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. I mean, this is essentially traditionalist, gynocentric bollocks
Yep.
the so-called secular Europe is allegedly fighting against. And is fighting so hard against that it's putting it back from where it came from. I know that doesn't make any sense. It's not supposed to make sense. It's ideology.
Well, but no, you're absolutely right. It is very much meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Feminism is gynocentrism. Traditionalism is gynocentrism. Feminists have not changed gender roles for women. They've only changed the enablers for women. They used to have to depend on a husband to keep them protected and out of work, and now they're moving it so that they can just depend on the state and change husbands or change partners as they please. And that is happening with a whole lot of help from men.
This also happens here, let's say, in Ireland, where what we're doing is we're having women who have 4 or 5 kids, as I'm sure it happens all over the world. It's getting worse. People are kind of moving to the point where every single person you know knows somebody who's committed suicide. Every single person you know knows at least one woman who has left her husband or kicked him out. I don't know any man who's actually gotten the house, gotten the kids. There was a lady called Lucian O'Shea. She wrote a doctorate on the issue of family law, and it frightened an awful lot of people because she went in there as a feminist to actually look at the family law courts and see how they operate. And she came out with her mind changed. She was convinced that if she walked into the courts, she would see clear bias against women. And when she came out of there, she knew that no, it's quite 100% the other way. And what I'll do is, the PDF is 448 pages long, but in there, it's as clear as the nose on your face that this illusion people have that men have it easier is clearly in there. You will see it. That I can't remember the exact figures, but it's over 90% When it comes to withholding children, it's, as we both know, it's women who do it, not men. It's encouraged because there's no punishment except for that one case that I heard about down in Tipperary, I believe it was. Other than that, nothing. I'll send Lucian that link and put it into the video title. That is terrifying. The lady's name is Roisin O'Shea, Dr. Roisin O'Shea. But it's.
What did she get any? Did she get any reaction for publishing that? Was there any pushback on her?
I don't know. I know one guy who has spoken to her. I can ask him. I don't know if she's going to respond or not. One of the problems, as you know, is that if you're an MRA, some people will not speak to you.
Yep.
Just point blank, will not speak to you. It's a very strange thing. They keep on telling us men need to open up and talk about our problems. So we do, and don't talk to us. Yeah, I mean, it's something. I mean, it's something I come up with last night where I was talking to a lady who I have great respect for about the whole issue of men and their issues and why the suicide rate is so bad. And she said men need to open up and talk about their problems. I said, well, we are, for Christ's sake. I mean, men in the 1950s didn't commit suicide as much as they do now. Did they talk more back then? I don't think so. I think men basically have what's it? I mean, I don't recall my father talking about his feelings. He didn't commit suicide.
John, if you allow me to disagree slightly,
Sure. Of course.
I think men were talking a bit more in the 50s than they do now, in the sense that they were talking more with each other. I mean, I'm pretty sure that in the 50s in Ireland was pretty much like the rest of Western Europe, which means that there were quite a few, let me put it this way, traditional institutions where men would congregate with each other and talk with each other, free of some of pressures from I'll just put it bluntly, from women. I mean, at the end of the day, there were some institutions, some of them formal, some of them, or most of them, less formal, but they were there, where men could talk with each other without having to endure politically correct bollocks. This is why, for instance, men's sheds in Australia are having so much success, because they're using exactly the same model.
We Ireland, we have men's sheds over here as well, and they are very, very popular. It's more popular here than it is in Australia, where it started off.
Why, I'm not surprised. I mean, at the end of the day, in Ireland, just like in most of Europe, most of what I would call traditional male institutions have been either undermined or destroyed completely. So that's why I'm not surprised that men's sheds are more popular in Ireland than they are in Australia.
I gotta say that I do agree with Lucian. I think, and I guess I'm the oldest guy in the room here. I don't know, but I do think that.
You are definitely the oldest man in the room. Yeah.
Well, I thought if I wasn't, it was probably Lucian. But I know that in this country, that in the time of my coming of age, there were countless groups, clubs, brotherhoods of men that existed without interference from women. When I say interference from women, we all know that in a group of men, the moment a woman walks in the room, the dynamic changes instantly. The moment she enters there, men will be relating to each other one way, and then a woman walks in the room, and then, especially if she's attractive, then suddenly the men are competitors with each other. They're not connected to each other in the same way. But feminism has destroyed all that, all of it. It has become verboten for men to congregate. It's suspect when men congregate. It's suspect when women are not allowed. What I find interesting is that it took an Irish barber to tell the world to screw off when he wanted to run his barbershop, and I believe he runs it in England. But
in Liverpool, yes.
Yeah, but he basically told them to piss off when they said, "Why don't you let women And his answer was, because I don't want to. And that is rare. I mean, I hope there's a lot more Irishmen like that guy.
Yeah, well, he is a contrary so-and-so. He is particularly contrary, but there are people going after him legally. So I don't know. I mean, most women who walk into his barbershop are there to get vouchers for men folk. He does things. He has music sessions in there. He has shots of whiskey. I mean, it's a boys' club. If you,
And that's a great thing. There's supposed to be boys' clubs. I think the idea of that part of the solution to this problem is men starting to claim space again, and men that are willing to stand up and say, no, we're not going to let women in. There is an abundance of women-only space in the world. We know that. We know that if you try being a news reporter and step into the female locker room on a sports team and see what happens. And then, of course, just the opposite. Women are in men's locker rooms all the time. They have encroached on our space. We've been told we're not allowed to have any, and I think it's important to have that. So what are your plans in the future now that we're 48 minutes into this, and I know that you have to go before the top of the hour. What are your plans for Men's Human Rights Ireland in the future? What do you want to see happen? How are things going there?
We would like to get more people involved with us. I'd say it's a very hard thing to do. It's an uphill battle trying to get people to actually stop, talk, and think about it. I have an idea which I'll share with you very shortly. I'm not going to do it online. It's hard. I mean, we will keep on sending complaints into the press council and see if they will take any action against the extremely biased media over here. One of the things that we've noted is that the reason that there are so many feminist journalists is because that's what women want to hear. It's hard. I mean, it's not like we're talking about where someone can say it's them and us. What we're talking about here is an ideology, getting through people's heads that this ideology is not a good thing. That the 90% of people who believe they are feminists believe that they're doing it for good reasons and not bad reasons. You're trying to get through somebody's head that what they have been told is good is in fact bad, and they're actually part of a bad ideology. That's really, really hard thing to do. So we have an uphill battle, okay, trying to get through people's heads. We were on the streets of Dublin, we've spoken to women, and every last woman I know I've ever spoken to knows that men have issues, knows that men are marginalised. I've spoken to some of my customers and I said, who has the upper hand in any marriage? And they all know. Every last woman I've spoken to, who's at the mercy of who? If you ask any woman that, who's at the mercy of who? If she just picks up the phone tomorrow and says, my husband's abusing me, who's going to get removed? If he does the same thing, what's going to happen? Nothing. So that's kind of stuff we talk to people about, and we trying to lift the lid up and say, look, this is what's going on now. Your ideology is not helping men. It's hindering men. It's hurting men. The other thing about the Istanbul Convention is that it makes the old claim that gender is a social construct, which I know. I'm a man. I'm not a woman. Every single mammal on the planet has two genders. Horses have two genders. The males act differently to females. They're not trained that way. That's just the way they are. We are mammals. We are exactly the same. We have different traits. My wife has cats here. There's one, two. The male cat is removed from the cat group. I can't remember what the name of it is. Very, very shortly after it's born, 8, maybe 10 weeks thereabouts. After that, once that happens, the male cats are all driven away from the troop. And that's what happens with those mammals. We men are the exact same. Not obviously not driven away. Not, well, we are driven away from our home. We are exactly the same. We have different traits. We are not the same as females. Females not the same as us. We don't think the same. We don't feel the same. We have different ways of doing things and feeling things. So getting that into people's heads is hard as well, because when you explain it to them, they understand. But it takes time to do that. And in the meantime, they're surrounded by all this. Women are victims.
Oh, we lost him again. I'm going to go ahead and take the opportunity to point out, one, that there's a big difference between gender and sex. Gender is a social construct. The whole idea of gender is a made-up deal by what? Gender ideologues who are promoting the idea of gender. What they won't face is that sex is not a it's not a social construct. You have a sex. I mean, there are people that do have characteristics of both sexes. There are people that don't fit into that mold of male versus female, but they're a tiny fraction of the population. And even those, if you consider those with gender identity disorder, they're a small fraction of a population. But gender is something made up in somebody's textbook. It doesn't have anything to do with what human beings really are. We are men and women for the most part, 99+%. We have differing sexualities at times. There's, male and female homosexuals. But whether you're baseline male or female is determined by biology and nothing else. You cannot socialize somebody out of their sex. They have done the testing, done brain scans. Men's brains operate differently than women's brains. This is science. It's not an argument to have. I think part of what John's talking about, though, goes to the basic fact that most men, because of their conditioning, you talk about social construct, the way that men are socialized, the way they're raised, plus their instincts as men, as males, the idea of anything that has anything to do with going to battle against women, men just totally won't have anything to do with. They won't be seen as somebody that will go to war with women, even if that's not what they're doing. They just won't get anywhere near it, and I think that's part of the difficulty. Making a guy understand that guys have it bad in court is easy if you sit down with him, but what's hard is to get him to take that and go tell somebody else, because he's likely to keep his mouth shut when he already knows that there's a problem.
That's what men do. We keep our mouth shut too much. What we need to do is have our own male spaces. That's why the men's sheds is a very, very good thing. They have. I've spoken to the guy who is in charge of the Irish branch, and he's exhausted because of what he has to do. Like in America, what we need here is a council of men and boys. But I know if we have a council of men and boys here, it'll be run by feminists under a feminist.
Well, yeah, that's. I just had that conversation with Warren on one of our hangouts the other night. That would be, we had a very good, honest discussion. Believe me, I'm a huge fan of Warren, and I'm a supporter of what he's doing. But the fact of the matter is, in the United States, I believe fully, and he knows I feel this way, that if he achieves his White House Council on boys and men, 5 minutes later it'll be put in the hands of Jane Fonda and Michael Kimmel. And so it is, in a way, to me, it's good PR. And to have this effort toward the council does stuff to change the way some people will think. But in the end, feminists are going to control that deal, and they'll suck all the money out of it and put it into women's programs. But of course, as we all know, the best way to help men is to help women.
Yep. And I think a part of the confusion and the issues that John has with Men's Human Rights Ireland in the on-the-ground battle for hearts and minds, because that's essentially what they're doing there, is the issue that we touched on our episode about France, if you remember, Paul. The English language has adopted the word gender to mean sex, which creates a crap ton of confusions in the wider culture. This has not been the case in other languages, in other parts of Europe where English is not a spoken language. And unfortunately, John and Men's Human Rights Ireland in general will have to deal with the same confusion that most of the Anglosphere has to deal with. That's why, for instance, I am in full agreement with people like Wendy McElroy, who says, let's start using sex again, and let's start claiming proper words to have their proper meaning.
And I have been doing that for some time. I used to write and I was part of that confusion, that I would use gender as though it were interchangeable with sex. And had somebody call that to my attention a couple of years ago, and I totally reversed paths on that. I never really, sometimes I slip into it because it's a learned behavior. But for the most part, I've gotten myself out of the habit of ever saying gender unless it's to identify that it's a meaningless term from political ideologues who want you to use that word instead of saying men and women and he and she, and it ends up, what do they have in Sweden? Now the hen, isn't it? Yes, because there's no his and her anymore. There's hen. And that will end up happening in America if we don't do something about it. And it's not that I don't think it's bad enough in Sweden, but after all, Sweden is the feminist country of the world.
Well, there's already a movement for that. It's called the preferred pronouns, Paul. You're behind your times.
Yes, I know. I'm just the old part that doesn't get the technology and can't keep up. And that's the way it's going to be probably till the day I die. But I see we're really close to closing time here. I want to go ahead, John.
I have to say I'm looking forward to actually seeing this video on YouTube. I'll actually see the whole. I'll be involved in the whole thing.
Oh yeah, it's going to be interesting. You'll get to see yourself rearrange your room, and you'll get to see yourself freeze a few times, but that's okay. We deal with it. This worked out pretty smoothly. Give us your website, John. Where can they go to find out about men's human rights?
menshumanrigtsireland.org.
.org, he was going to say before he froze again. It's menshumanrigtsireland.org. You can visit them there. I want to remind everybody, upcoming October this year, Houston, Texas, the second, I love saying second, the second International Conference on Men's Issues, which means, of course, that they tried to stop the first one, and they failed. And they will try to stop this one. They will also fail because we are determined, because things, as bad as they are beginning to change. There's finally a counter-narrative starting to emerge, and the feminists have gone nuts in this country and in Canada trying to contain it, and it's done them no good whatsoever. It's only blown up more in their face. There's more, anti-feminism is on the rise, and I think we will see a time in the future when the word anti-feminist doesn't create so much fear in people, and matter of fact, it will create relief. And with that, I guess we're going to sign off for tonight. I want to tell everybody, a couple of weeks down the road here, we're going to be, Lucian and I will be back with Anil Kumar of the Save India Family Foundation and a couple of other organizations. I can't wait to talk to that guy because these guys are light years ahead of all of us, man. Can you believe they're actually having classes for their activists on how to pace their activism so they don't burn out? And here we are, most of us, just struggling to find time to do anything, and we work as hard as we can. We do everything that we can, and they're actually saying we've got enough of us now that we need to just focus more on organizational and pacing and not burning people out. And they actually have facilities to do this in. So hopefully we can learn a whole lot, all of us, by what these guys are doing in India. Because as bad as our problems are in America, and as bad as they are getting to be in Ireland now, it's obvious from talking to John and from some of the things I've been reading and from seeing. I was pleased to see, by the way, that the white ribbon in Ireland was called out in the press for their lies about
rape figures.
Yeah, rape figures that were just outright blatant lies, and they got called out by it. That was a good moment. But I'm looking forward to seeing what Anil has to say He will be at the conference as well. He's coming again for the second time from India. And we're looking at a lot of movement in the days ahead. So I ask you guys to join us in the next couple of weeks. Join me and Lucian. John Gormley, thank you very much for joining us tonight and for doing what you do. You guys are up against the real odds there. And
it's hard, it's tough, but you know, we'll carry on as much as possibly can and see what we can do. I mean, as I say, basically, when we're up against, it's just sheer, utter and total blinkers on. People cannot see beyond those blinkers. And what we have to do, basically, is say, listen, hang on a sec. It's your son. It's your husband. It's your father. They're not your enemy. They love you, or you love them, and that's the hardest thing we have to do. And
the thing we have to do, and I believe this fully, is we have to continue to do what we have. I think
make it personal.
We exactly. And here's the thing, and this is where, because believe me, for years I've been dealing with people saying, Paul, you need to settle down. Don't be so abrasive. Don't be so nasty with people. Listen, guys, I've gotten that, Reddit men's rights thing down really good. Oh, this is going to tear the movement apart. The feminists won't believe us. The mainstream won't like us. Folks, whatever you want to believe, feminism mainstream is never going to like us. It is up to us to make them understand that whether they like us or not, we're not going to shut up. And we will offend them anytime we choose to, which will be often and harshly. And until more men, I believe, adopt that attitude, then we can stay stuck. But fortunately, things are changing. People are talking. With that, I'm going to say good night to everybody. If you give it to you two, any last words from John or Lucian before we go?
What I will say is that people need to connect the issues that men are facing with suicide. I mean, in Ireland, I'll say it's officially it's over 5-1. The reason it's over 5-1 is very simple, because men are deciding they've had enough. They go into their back shed, they sit down, they put a rope around their neck, and they just hang themselves until they're dead. That is what men are suffering from. We need to go along and say, well, why are men doing that? It's because they are all around is a constant women are victims, whereas men have no consideration. There's no one's going along and saying, well, look, men are suffering as well. We need to help them now. And that is probably our biggest problem, basically trying to get people to connect the two between the suicide rate and what I consider to be a toxic society. But getting the balance right is very, very hard. I'll send you a message in a minute, and then I have to go.
Okay. And until the empathy gap.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and until the empathy gap will be bridged, I guess the last words that I have is just take the red pill.